Welcome to Uncomfortable True Podcast with my special guest, Christopher. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell the audience a little about yourself?
Hello, everyone. Listeners new and afar. My name is Christopher. I hail from New York City. I have quite an extensive background of lived experience. I have been through much trauma and adversity, and I say much with an emphasis. But what really got me to where I am today, which is from victim to victor, is the immense amount of resources and supports out there in the world, and developing a growth mindset, which allowed me to overcome my challenges, as well as becoming a devoted learner of myself and how to improve. And now I'm on a mission to bless and support and equip others who are vulnerable and marginalized.
You mentioned about trauma. Can you share the most pivotal moment in your journey from victim to victor?
Yes, that would be when I sought out a counselor slash advocate at a local nonprofit that deals with those who are going through abuse. And from that moment forward, I turned into the hashtag I coined, super advocate. This advocate saw in me potential and advocacy strength and resource strengths that I did not believe in, and empowered me to be my own advocate through the trials and tribulations with her support. So that got me started my journey to not only self-advocacy, but my passion for advocacy in general, which is what I would say my life is devoted to now, advocating.
I'm glad you found somebody that could help you with your journey. I had a mentor once, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. It's rare you find somebody that's really good at their job and really cares.
It is. It would have been nice if I had a mentor as a youth, but I guess it happening is better than it not happening, regardless of when.
Yes, I understand. How do you maintain your passion and drive in advocating for crime victims?
It's not. I would be lying to myself and all of you if I said it was easy. It's never easy, but what I've learned over the recent years, I would say since COVID, is pacing myself, not going I'm 2 feet, two hands in over myself. So I've cut back on some of my involvements, and I've been aligning my involvements in the community and my own development to what I'm to how I see myself going. So that's, I would say, a main way that I keep the drive.
Thank you for that. Can you describe a particular challenging case you worked on and how you navigated it?
Yes. There was this individual in my community who was going through some issues similar to what I experienced. So when he reached out to me, I provided him a listening ear and offered my support. He needed a lot, needed me to do some pet care while he wasn't available. But I leveraged my own credentials and authority to be there to support him in a very trying time when access to him was not really feasible for the average person. and I provided spiritual support for him since that was a big part of my journey back then, and just a lot of accompaniment, and just helping him like process and figure things out. And that was
Okay.
very challenging. I ended up burning out really bad in the middle of that, which was a big lesson for me.
It was difficult trying to get him to see your side.
Not to see my side. I burned out really bad because I was giving myself much more than I could manage, like physically, emotionally. So I learned that I need to pace myself and listen to my inner compass when it's telling me, "Hey, slow down. Hey, preserve your energy."
Mhm.
Because I ended up not getting to fully finish helping him because of the burnout I experienced.
Uh, what misconceptions about domestic violence survivors do you encounter most often?
There's some big ones that need to be um overcome, or that it's easy that a survivor can just leave this abuse whenever they want. That is often not the case, and sometimes staying with somebody who's causing harm to them is at times safer than actually leaving, since leaving can put them on the radar and with the like, and it can cause disruption, and that can actually lead to more serious harm, even homicide, sadly, unfortunately. So that's one misconception I've experienced and dealt with. And another one I would say is to understand that a victim and an abuser can be very versatile. It can even be an elderly parent abusing a younger child. It can be folks who are LGBTQ. It can be law enforcement, a law enforcement spouse, even abusing a law enforcement spouse. So there's really no end to the roles of perpetrator and victim.
You're so right about that. Lines do get blurred a lot. How does your personal experience as a domestic violence survivor influence your work?
First off, it brings a lot of it brings me very personally involved with the work I do in the community and the city regarding domestic violence and like gender violence. Um, it allows me to empathize as opposed to having compassion. I actually have deep empathy, in part due to my own experiences, and it allows me to see into situations perhaps in a different angle or additional angle or lens than somebody who didn't experience it, and that can be used to provide higher level of support for others.
Okay, thank you for that. How do you ensure the safety and confidentiality of those you coach and advocate for?
Okay, a big thing for that is if somebody is if somebody reaches out to me hypothetically and says they're going through something abusive or some form of trauma, I want to have it on my radar at all times. Could somebody be could somebody else have access to their phone, potentially the person who's inflicting the harm? And if I suspect that, um, I would find alternative means. And I had somebody I was counseling, coaching about domestic violence, and I just was very strategic and nuanced with my outreach until I could ascertain if it was safe for me to communicate on their phone with them and how they wanted to go about it. But once the survivor says, "Hey, it's okay to contact me on my phone," I feel like if I feel off, I ethically and morally need to do what I need to do to assure their safety, but I also need to respect their autonomy and requests to communicate with them or to assist them. So it's finding a fine balance between autonomy and safety, I would say.
Okay. In your opinion, what is the most pressing issue facing crime victims today?
Okay, that I would say is this is going to be a very broad and multi-encompassing issue, but that would be justice and equality for victims of crime. So unfortunately, victims of crime often get re-traumatized by the criminal justice system. Our law enforcement professionals are not adequately educated on interpersonal violence and victimology, how to interact and treat victims. And often that causes harm that could have easily been prevented if they had adequate training or dispatched individuals who are more equipped to handle certain things,
Oh,
and often just not getting the help the survivor needs, like falling out on the process because of lack of faith, lack of respect and support.
what's your advice to those that are self-destructive, that will reach out to their abuser even though they're in a safe space? But after
Oh,
after they are in a safe space,
after they're in a safe space,
yes, they reach out to their abuser.
I would honestly, that's their decision, like their free will. But if they came to me and asked my opinion or advice, I would want to make sure their safety was planned for, and I would potentially dig into it from like a coaching perspective, perhaps, and try to find out to find out if it was best serving them. But that would depend on the relationship, therapeutic relationship with them. And I would just want them to be aware of both sides and see it from the good and the bad and help figure out what's best for them. But ultimately, it'll be their call.
Okay. I asked that question because my mother used to work in a shelter, women's shelter, and one of the clients in the shelter, it was a domestic violence shelter at that too. And the lady reached out to her abuser, and he met her and the baby, and he unalived her on the street. And the other day, I was walking with my mother to take some food to my grandmother, and she said, "Remember when I told you that story about my client at my shelter?" I'm like, "Yeah." She said, "This is where it happened at," and because we was on the straight in the same spot. The lady was unalived by her abusive husband.
Wow, that's really rough.
Yeah.
And that just to me um equates to something that's so hard when you are a crime victim advocate, because ultimately the decisions of those you are supporting are the are, are can't always be influenced by you. You meaning us, the advocates, and having to sit with and process outcomes or circumstances out of our control is something that's very real and very serious. And that is why I feel it's important for self-care and to debrief and to have a system in place for your own well-being.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. What impact do you hope to achieve through your free coaching and counseling service?
Yes, as an as somebody who is up and coming and trying to get into leveraging coaching and counseling support through my nonprofit, the outcome that I would like to achieve would be just getting my voice out there, being able to help people realize it's okay to not be okay, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that I am willing and open to being of whatever support I can. If I cannot support somebody personally, I would help them with resources and just leveraging my nonprofit and my own experience and skills to bring hope and support to the masses.
Okay, my next question for you is, what strategies do you use to educate the public about domestic violence and human trafficking?
The main strategy I use is social media, and I do have a book as well. It's currently off the market, but I'm going to be revising it. And that book is a self-help book on domestic violence. So I would say the main strategy is just getting it out there that there is hope and demystifying the stigmas involved, and just letting people know that it's okay to not be okay,
Nice.
and just trying to find ways in to get involved and to support people and to grow alongside my community.
Okay. Do you know what NCIC means?
NCIC?
Yes.
Not off the top of my head.
No, because I pull up the statistics and it says number of NCIC missing person files in the United States in 2022 by age and gender. So under 21, there's 172,266 males that are missing, and females are 206,371 missing under 21. 21 and over is 102,368 males, and females are 64,956, 21 and over. It's a lot of people.
It truly is.
In the U.S. alone.
Well,
So,
that's very frightening and very concerning.
like, do you think these are networks or just individual people doing bad things? 'Cause I think it's too many people to be just a random person that live next door.
Yeah, definitely. I would have to agree with you. But even before that, I would say I wouldn't even take those numbers as fully verbatim, because I feel that there's a decent chance that the numbers could very well be higher, especially for the females over 21.
Exactly. I was surprised by the list too when I seen it. But that was just one site. I bet you other sites got different numbers.
Yeah, different statistics, different ways of figuring out the numbers.
Mm-hmm. And we don't even know what all those ways are. We just know they found a way to give us a result or something, and we gotta take that at face value. But like you said, it could be higher, it could be lower, but 9 out of 10 is higher.
Yeah, I feel like it's safer to assume higher until proven otherwise.
Okay. How do you measure the success of From Victims to Victors Inc.?
I haven't really done too much with the nonprofit yet. I'm trying to really get it like to bloom and blossom. But I would say what comes to mind with measuring success would be For starters, social media reach would be one pretty solid metric. Another metric would be speaking engagements and size and scope of the engagements. And if I have any like consulting or training engagements, I would put that into the metrics, and just and definitely reviews and funding, obviously.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone who is currently experiencing domestic violence?
Okay, I would start by letting them know that their story is real, their experience and feelings are real and valid, regardless of what people say. It is never okay. It is never There was never an excuse for somebody abusing you, mistreating you. There is hope available, and there are options outside of law enforcement as well. And even within law enforcement, there are some non-conventional options as well, such as integrative domestic violence court. And I would encourage folks to have a safety plan and have a way to escape if needed, and have an ally or a close friend who you can confide in, the person who causes harm is not connected with. But keep your circle limited and intimate when it comes to sharing your experiences to protect yourself. And I would say that's a pretty solid foundation.
Yeah, I totally agree. Are you familiar with the media right now with the celebrity John Diddy Combs?
I heard about it, but I haven't been able to get myself to the point emotionally to watch the video.
Yes. I
But
don't
I
want to.
definitely want to watch it, and I can get myself to that point.
Yeah, I don't want to go too much deep into the video or anything like that. I just want to talk on the part on his accusers. So
Mhm.
and accusers of other individuals. So like a lot of accusers, and especially with celebrities, these are people that have been assaulted or R words or mediated in some kind of way 10 years ago, 11 years ago, 20 years ago. In Bill Cosby case, some of them was like 40, 60 years ago. So my point is, why do these women take so long? Like for example, one of Sean Diddy Combs' accusers held the clothes for 2 years before, and then recently just made her case because what happened with Cassie, so on. But she could have came forward same day and gave us clothes to the police. And like to get Rihanna, for example, Rihanna was assaulted one day, and the next day we all knew about it. It wasn't a week later, it wasn't a month later, it wasn't years later. It was literally the next day we knew what happened between Chris Brown and Rihanna, at least some parts of it, because she went straight to the hospital and everything. So what you think about what I said just now?
I have some very um a bit, I guess, non-conventional thoughts on on this, and I'm probably gonna get a lot of slack on the good old web for this, but I sometimes question the validity depending on the circumstances. Like if somebody is waiting like years and years, like first off, for a sexual assault, I can see that because sometimes you never heal from that. You never get to the point where you can even speak to anybody about it. But still, I would analyze the media component and the status or influence of both parties, and I would really look into it, like, and analyze it with the obviously from the lens that to believe the victim until proven otherwise. And but there's definitely some skepticalness with how these laws have allowed to go back so far for bringing cases forward. And I do think part of it is financial gains and to profit big law in regards to lawsuits, potentially, possibly.
Yes, I totally agree. Everybody that accusing him, he didn't actually do something to, then, but it could be a higher number of people than we think it is.
Mhm.
But this guy also been with a lot of influential people over the years, like Jennifer Lopez, for example. Did he abuse Jennifer Lopez? He was with Steve Harvey's stepdaughter, Lori Harvey. Did he abuse her? Abuser know who to abuse and who not to abuse. That's another thing we gotta
Mhm.
take into aspect too. He knew who to do that to, who not to do that to.
Yeah, somebody who abuses others definitely has a certain type of way that they process and see the world, and that can often be a corrosive, manipulative, narcissistic, like egotistical ways to view and process the world around them and others.
Totally agree. Can you discuss an upcoming project or organization you're working on?
Yes. Nothing is official yet, but I do want to have my first gala for From Victim to Victor. I'm probably going to do that like next year, but before then, to build momentum, I am thinking about having either an online auction or maybe a mini restaurant day or mini restaurant weekend with restaurants in my community, primarily like mom and pop restaurants, like locally owned restaurants where a portion of their proceeds go to my nonprofit, and then use that to amp up to having a gala next year.
Okay, you mentioned the proceeds go to your nonprofit. So my next question is going to go alongside with that.
Okay.
And also, you hear people a lot in videos say donations play a big part in, but we never know how much that road is. Like, do it go to advertising? Do it go to new equipment, or do it go to auto board? So this next question goes alongside with that. What role do donations play in support the work of From Victim to Victor Inc.?
Okay. Haven't really thought much about this, but I would say philanthropy, since one of the three main arms of my nonprofit is philanthropy, as well as education and direct service. So donations would support that, like philanthropy in my community, outreach, like getting the word and message out to others, and supporting others in need as well.
Okay.
Then, then eventually, I would like to get to the point where it's self-sustaining is my full-time job. But for now, I would say it's my stepchild, not my child.
Mm-hmm.
Just at this point.
Okay. Let's see. Since we was on domestic violence a moment ago, let's go into mental health. Can you discuss
Okay.
the importance of mental health support from criminal victims?
Extremely crucial and pivotal, and often underlooked as well. Um, I think the first um point would be understanding there was very nuanced and unique complexities to experiencing mental health challenges when you are simultaneously living through an abusive situation or being victimized by others. like for example, like I was assaulted on stepping off of a bus at the last November, and my PTSD was rehabbed. I had and it was like a period of just being more on edge, being more having a really hard time. So I would say that people need to understand PTSD. It's not just for military and first responders. There's a great number of people who have endured child abuse, domestic violence, sexual violence, human trafficking that also have PTSD.
Hmm. That's so true. That's so true. What is the most rewarding aspect of your work with From Victim to Victim?
Although not like too up and coming yet, I would say I would say right now is having it and the fact that I'm building it up and getting it out there, branding myself, and just knowing that the sky's the limit and that I will do big things,
How do you
and
handle?
having the opportunity to speak and promote it on platforms like this as well.
Uh, yes, as long as you get your voice out, I, I think people will listen. If it's not in the beginning, eventually they will listen.
Yeah, traction.
Yes, they always say there's always a family for somebody on the internet.
Mhm.
How do you handle skepticism and pushback when advocating for criminal victims?
Okay. Sometimes individuals when we're advocating need to be innovative and find strategic ways to wiggle our way into situations, environments to make our voice heard. One hypothetical example would be if I was dealing with, let's say, a group of high school kids who were who just didn't want to hear it, but I was being hired to make them hear it. I would have to think, how am I gonna reach them? Possibly something like gamification, maybe a social media challenge, like compensating them.
Okay. What role do community partnerships play in your work?
Um, um, a great deal. When it comes to the victim advocacy, victim services space, if it without community partnerships, organizations such as mine aren't going to have the aren't gonna be fully aware of what's going on in the community. Aren't gonna be as aware of stakeholder meetings, opportunities to give testimony, and community partnerships also strengthens um connect the connection between nonprofits, individuals, and survivors, and that's exactly what's needed.
Can you walk us through a typical day in the life of an advocate and coaching?
Yes. Coaching is something that I feel like I do almost subconsciously. Like I don't do it much like professionally yet, but like meaning for pay. But like when I do coach people, one of the main things I do is um I have a knack for asking, like applying like direct questions to get results. So that is one thing. And also um a day in the life would be just keeping track of what needs to be done, what wants to be done. For example, podcasts. I decided, hey, I'm gonna get my voice out there on podcasts. So I'm gonna do A, B, and C to achieve A. And just pacing myself, like I said prior, not getting into too much excitement, but not doing too little. And just right now, a big part of my nonprofit and services is like revamping the brand. And I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. No, that's very well said. What's the most surprising thing you learned about domestic violence and human trafficking through your work?
That's a really good question. I would say um, the most surprising thing that I learned was just how common it is for first responders and law enforcement personnel to be victims of intimate partner violence. I've spoken to more than one person who has been in that predicament, and it's opened me up to understanding the dynamics a little bit better, but also like almost like somewhat startling and scary, but in a good way because I have that information and insight, and that can push me forward to spark change and to advocate.
Yes, totally agree. There's a lot of domestic violence victims out there that don't have the opportunity to work, and if they do work, they pay get taken. Like I knew a guy once, and he was my roommate, and his
Mhm.
girlfriend worked, and when she came home, the money she made was for him to buy weed, for him to buy whatever drinks he want, and buy video games. So all he did is play video games all day. And she would go to work, come home. At the end of the week, payday, she buying him a new game or a new map for the game or something like
Yeah, financial abuse and exploitation is a big dimension of in, interpersonal violence that people often underlook, and I feel like financial abuse needs to be put more on the pedestal, for lack of better terms,
that. Yeah,
and
funny.
highlighted as
Now go ahead, finish what you want to say.
and highlighted as a major component of abuse.
So going back to the person that getting abused for their income and stuff like that,
Mhm.
for somebody else's personal gain. I want question go along with that. What role does education play in your mission to break stigmas related to abuse and mental health?
That's a great question. I really really love that question. By the way,
Thank you.
um, you're welcome. Breaking stigmas is an extremely personal issue to me when it comes to abuse and mental health. Um, I would start by sharing that I'm a survivor of 4 suicide attempts and was dealt with abuse from a younger age into an older age, and was pretty much abused in all ways except for sexual. So I have quite a bit of lived experience, and I would say that's good, not bad, because what I experienced wasn't always good. But having lived through what I lived through, I am stronger. So I'm sorry. What was the other part of the question again?
I moved down.
So it happens when I get really passionate into what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
I moved it. what role do education plays in domestic violence and mental health abuse?
Okay. There needs to be a lot of. I would say we need we need to inspire and equip survivors to be leaders. We need a major awakening of the survivor leader movement. First off, folks like myself who are survivor leaders who are willing and capable of sharing our lived experiences. Education goes in tandem with outreach, at least in my opinion, and that can be done remotely, but you also need to do outreach and education in person, face to face. There's just something with face to face contact and connections that I would say brings it that much further than if it was remotely. And not being afraid to talk candidly and open about stigmas and myths and controversial aspects as we are doing right now together.
Mm-hmm.
And continuing to enforce survivor leaders such as myself to continue learning and continue growing and advancing both personally and professionally.
Yes, and education will help them lead them to financial freedom. They don't have to worry about working dead end jobs. They could actually get a job working in an office somewhere, CEO, bank, or something like that.
Indeed, it would. And on that note, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. And I feel that if somebody can heal their own traumas and fuel their body, mind, and spirit in healthy, holistic ways, then the future is infinite. There's so much potential, indefinite potential.
Okay, this is my last question for you.
Okay.
What message do you want to convey to the public about support in criminal violence and breaking stigmas?
Okay. Breaking stigmas is not a one size fit all. It's not something that one person can do now and then forget about it. It's ongoing, continual. We need to come together as a collective society to advocate against stigmas and to demystify them. I would say one way that can be done is through hashtags. I would encourage those who listen to this episode to start using the hashtag super advocate and to declare themselves as super advocates. That's one thing. And just not being afraid to say I'm not okay, I need help. And that's strength, not a weakness. Don't ever let yourselves feel that asking for help or saying you're not okay is a weakness, because it's completely a strength. It's okay to cry, and even to admit to somebody that you're crying is a strength as well. There's no shame in crying. And I just would say keep pushing, keep going forward, and know that things will and do get better. You just need to give blood, sweat, and tears sometimes, and keep the faith.
Okay, you got any last words for the audience?
Yes. If any of you would like to learn more about From Victim to Victor or connect with me for speaking engagements like education and or partnerships, or just to share ideas or to get like brief in the moment like support, feel free to go to the link shared and select my social media accounts and website, etc., to contact me. And I look forward to creating a future where survivors get are heard and get the support and justice they deserve, and working and with society just going up and up with protecting and supporting victims.
Thank you for that. Before we go,
You're welcome.
let's play a game.
Okay.
If you could be anybody, past, present, or future, and for 1 year, and come back with their knowledge, who will it be?
That's very hard one. Two came to mind.
All right. I'm gonna go first. Then you have some
Okay.
time to answer. Okay. I would be Mr. Musa, because allegedly he was the richest person ever to live. And 9 out of 10 is probably true, but I would want to be him for a year. I want to know everything he knew about that world at that time, and I also would probably bury some gold somewhere where I could dig it up later. To whoever, how many years it been since he was alive.
Oh, that's very inquisitive, very interesting.
How about you? Notice something?
Yes, I would be Michael J. Dowling, the president and CEO of Northville Health, which is the largest employer in New York State. I would
Okay.
choose him because he's of the same descent as me. He's Irish. He came up from rags to riches, and is somebody who you never would have viewed as getting to where he got to, but he did. So that within itself is a testament to his strength, resilience, determination, and he's such a visionary. And if I could be him for 1 year and come back, I would have so much knowledge and so much influence that I could literally break down walls and stigmas and institute programs and reforms for my passion, my purpose, mental health, victim services, advocacy.
Amazing answer. Amazing answer. I like that. Thank you for watching Uncomfortable Truth podcast. My special guest, Christopher. I really appreciate you, sir. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.